And we're back. Are we back better than ever? Probably not, but I think I found a solution to my chair problem because the cushion sits super low, and if you ever notice, I tend to just sink over the course of my reviews. So I found something to stick under there, and we'll see if it works. But when I left off, Fiero had just been murdered, and Elphaba had gone to a convent to do whatever she needed to do to heal or just to get through life. Now it is 7 years later, and Elphaba is leaving the convent. During her time there, she had actually taken care of somebody from her old friend group, and he had been the guy when they were at the Philosophers Club. He had been the guy that had been tied to the tiger. Do we understand what actually happened there? No. All we know is that he was traumatized so much he never recovered, and she was taking care of him in the last days of his life. This is going to play a part later on in the novel, but she is leaving. What she is intent on doing is going to Kiamo Ko, which is where Fiero lived. It's his castle, and she wants to admit her sins to his wife, Sarima. Only thing is, there's also this little boy who's like 7 years old tagging along, and the girl who is supposed to be taking Elphaba along this journey is like, who is this kid? And he's like, I don't know. They just said I need to go with her. He's an extreme roly-poly, and he seems pretty sweet, but other than that, we don't know who he is. One thing I said, I don't understand the point of this novel. Sometimes it felt like Maguire was really just trying to get to the end where we encountered Dorothy and trying to hit those high notes that would set up that classic story of Dorothy's showdown with the witch. So along this journey, Elphaba collects a menagerie of sorts. The little boy, Lear, connects with this dog named Killjoy. And then Elphaba collects like a hive of bees. Not collects per se, but like they adopt her. And then she also, I thought this was so interesting, yet played very little, if nothing at all, into the overall narrative. Her caravan encounters this woman named Princess Nastoya and the Scrow people. Turns out Princess Nastoya is actually an elephant under an enchantment. At least that's the best that I could interpret it. That's something that Elphaba says. All we know is that she's like, who put you under this enchantment? And Nastoya says, I can't tell you because that could affect me. Are you a person under an enchantment, or are you an elephant under an enchantment? They had this big kumbaya moment, and Princess Nastoya bestows on her 2 real ratchety crows. I'm thinking all of these animals are going to come into play, and while they do, they also don't. Nastoya is also saying, you are now hereforth a witch. Now, Elphaba, who doesn't claim her own name anymore, she is officially a wicked witch, and I can't say she plays into it, but she does in the sense that she's like, well, if they want to call me a witch, they can call me a witch, and that is that. Eventually, they make it to Kiamo Ko, and they meet Sarima. She has 3 children with Fiero. And okay, a little bit of spoiler here. We have a little bit of narration, a little bit of omniscient narration when Elphaba gets to Kiamo Ko. Because as they're walking up, it says that Lear is walking into his father's home. So now we know that Lear is Fiero's, ergo, he must also be Elphaba's, but she barely recognizes his existence. So we don't know what's happening here. Except that, yeah, let's just assume that he is their child and this is his family that he's gonna go meet, but he doesn't know it. I thought it would have been more impactful if he had known it, or if maybe this had been Elphaba's narration saying, well, yep, now got to admit that this is his family. But no, so ambiguous as to what people know, what people don't know, what the story is trying to tell us, like what we're trying to get from it. Fiero's other 3 children are Irji, Manic, and Noor. Noor is the youngest, and honestly, I found this really disturbing. After they arrive and we are in, I think it's Sarima's point of view, it could be omniscient narration, but Noor, it's bedtime, and Noor climbs into her lap, and she's like 7, guys. And she starts to suckle on Sarima's breast. Are we getting into realms that I don't want to dive into? Thankfully, nothing else is said from there, but I was like, I don't get it. Like, what's happening? Except that Noor is very childlike. She has a lisp. She still sucks her thumb. She's kind of the reject of the trio. Irji is the oldest, and he is the one expected to be the next prince. However, it's Manic who is displaying those leadership qualities, but Manic is a jerk. He is such a bully, and he heads the bullying of Lear because Lear is so fat, essentially. But before we get into that, Elphaba is like, I need to tell you something. We also have Sarima's 5 sisters named 2 through 6. And they might actually have names, but it's been so long since those names were used that nobody remembers what they are. They are like boy crazy Stacy, but unless Sarima is married, they have no prospects. They are unable to have men for themselves, so they're just hanging around Kiamo Ko, eating stuff and like, you know, holding themselves up in their wing of the castle and living the lavish life that they try to not let anybody know they're living. Sarima is like, no, you know, like, you just need to take shelter here. It's the winter, so just stay with us. We don't need to talk about anything just yet. When Elphaba does try to talk to her about it, Sarima tells her that she knows Fiera was having an affair, but she believes it was with Glinda because of all the things that Fiera would say about her from back when they were in school. It never comes to light that Elphaba is the mistress, but Elphaba pulls herself up in her tower and does absolutely nothing, interacts with nobody. On the caravan ride to Kiamo Ko, she had also rescued a snow monkey she named Chistery. So now she's got her bees, she's got her monkey, she's got her crows, and she's trying to teach Chistery how to talk. I just kept waiting for character development from her, waiting to see where all this was leading with her, and it led nowhere. She does encounter Sarima one day, and Sarima is looking at the Grimory, which it's a big deal in the movie, but in the book has no purpose whatsoever. Sarima tells her that it has been there forever. She'd actually forgotten about it. She can't even read. But some old guy many moons ago had brought it to them, and she tried to be like, no, but he insisted, so she took the book and she just put it up in a tower and she never looked at it again. But it's fascinating, it is beautiful. Elphaba says, can I take this? So she's trying to use this to be magical. She's trying to use this book to create winged monkeys and do all these things, but she's largely unsuccessful, and I was so bored at this point. I just didn't understand what the point of any of it was. Manic, as I said, does not like Lear, but Lear looks up to Manic. So whenever they would play, and especially hide and seek, Lear would try to go wherever Manic is, but because Lear is not good at hiding, he'd always get found, and because they always knew that he was somewhere near Manic, Manic would always get found. Manic has enough of this. He tricks Lear into hiding in a well. Nobody can find Lear for like an entire day. When they do find him, I don't know if he's actually dead, but he's near death. And all the women are telling Elphaba, you need to bring him back to life. You need to use your witchiness, because everybody calls her Aunt Witch. You need to use your witchiness to bring him back to life. Really just what brings him back to life is CPR. When he does come back, he's like, I spoke to a carp. So carp with a capital C. Now we're like, there's an animal in their well. That's really interesting. Does anything happen with this? No. But what does happen is soldiers show up. They tell them that they are there to survey the 1,000-year grasslands. Elphaba is against this. The sisters are like, ooh la la, hearts in our eyes, let's get some action. Noor is like a burgeoning woman, and they're all enjoying having her around. And then Lear is like, oh hey, I want to be just like you. And it seems that him walking around after them gets him into shape. At this point, so Elphaba is so mad at Manic that she does manifest him getting hit in the head by an icicle, and he dies. I don't get it, but these kids, minus Lear, can't seem to leave Elphaba alone. Can't leave her stuff alone. They tend to go into her private space all the time and take stuff that doesn't belong to them. One day, Noor gets the brilliant idea that she's gonna go and clean the soldier's cabin. She steals the broom, she goes, she's feeling very in touch with herself. So she takes off her shirt and she's like, well, I'm gonna put a guy's cape on instead. Why she takes off her shirt to put a cape on, I don't know. But it's also mentioned she can't read. So it's very pointedly mentioned that she pays no attention to all the papers and the maps that are obviously important to the real reason these guys are here. She gets on the broom and it lifts off. She ends up like flying to the top of the tower, and Elphaba's like, excuse you, get off my broom. She goes down to the ground and she's like, I'm never getting on that thing again. I need to put my shirt on. Elphaba apparently had no clue this broom could do this, so now she's spending all this time trying to figure out how to get this broom to fly, but she's not magically inclined. Oh my gosh, this book actually drives me crazy because there's all these really great elements. They could be woven into a really great story, but they all have no point. Along this timeline, Nanny also appears, and this is where it is important to know that Elphaba had attended to that one classmate of hers because he had mentioned it to somebody and word had gotten back, and Elphaba has not talked to her family in 13 years now. She never let anybody know where she went. They had no clue what had happened to her, but Nanny gets word and Nanny says, I'm gonna go find her. So she shows up at Kiamo Ko. She brings Elphaba the news that the eminent Throp has died. And without Elphaba there, Nessa Rose has now become the leader of Munchkin Land. And she is a tyrant. She does not care. Glinda had placed an enchantment on those shoes, so now she has no problems walking, even without her arms. Like, she has no issues with her balance. She's just power hungry, and she is so religiously driven that she is trying to impose all of this onto her people. She's like, you know what, maybe you need to go talk to Nessa Rose. Eventually, Elphaba does, and she just discovers nothing can be done. Nessa Rose does not care. She just likes the money and the power, and she's going to do things the way she wants to do them. This is when we do see the lore of the Tin Woodman. We had already seen, just like in the movie, we had already seen the lion because the lion cub shows up in a class and some girls rescue him. It is not Elphaba and Fiyero, it's just some other girls. But we see this frightened lion cub, so now we know this is going to be the cowardly lion. And then Nessa Rose is approached by one of her citizens, and this lady's like, look, this dude over here is distracting my daughter. So I need you to do something to get him out of the picture. So Nessa Rose enchants his axe, because he is a woodsman, enchants his axe, and it is going to cut off all of his body parts until he can no longer be an active member of society. What we know is that somebody is able to put him back together again, like Humpty Dumpty, into a tin woodsman. If somebody could explain to me how this works, because he cuts off all of his limbs, like how in the world does he survive that? And then obviously he has no heart, so just, I get it. Realism, let's just suspend our belief, but there was a lot of belief suspense for this novel, and it drove me crazy because it never added up to anything. I don't care. Like, I know this book is not realistic, but I need all the things that Maguire is telling me are unrealistic to add up to something that makes sense. and none of it does. And then on top of that, we've got the Tin Woodsman, who should not be surviving as a Tin Woodsman. In exchange for Nessarose enchanting this axe and ridding this woman of this man, she gives Nessarose animals. Elphaba goes to these animals and she's like, why do you let them treat you like this? And they're like, look, that's just our lot in life. There's nothing we can do about it. She's like, well, I'm gonna set you free. And they're like, why are you gonna set us free? They're just gonna capture us and bring us back anyway. So it's a cow and some sheep. And the sheep don't even talk. But Elphaba does go to Nessarose and say, hey, I set your animals free. And Nessarose is like, that's great. This is your home too. You can do whatever you want. Again, I don't understand. What was the whole point? Like, I needed to know why we cared so much about the animals. Elphaba realizes there's no point in her being here. She goes home. When she gets to Kiamo Ko, she finds it abandoned by everybody except Lear and Nanny. Now we are in section 5, which is the murder and its afterlife. It seems that, yes, to everybody's great surprise, the soldiers were there to get rid of the royal family, Fiero's family. They had taken everybody and nobody knows where they went. Elphaba is furious. She's like, why did nobody help them? And then he's like, you think we didn't try? You think that we did not put up a fight? Lear has disappeared. Now we are however many years later. It seems that I think the soldiers took pity on him and they just tied him up and left him in the forest or something. But Lear is an enigmatic character, and so I was kind of disappointed that that's what that was. I kept waiting for him to have a purpose as well, and he never does. But Elphaba gets word about this tornado that has dropped a house on her sister. She's like, well, guess I gotta go and say my goodbyes. She goes to Munchkin Land only to discover that the Munchkins have revolted and they are tearing apart this palace that Nessarose has lived in, and they are celebrating their freedom. She honestly could care less. Or couldn't care less. Sorry, my sister always gets on to me about that, but yes, couldn't care less. Until she runs into Glinda, and Glinda says, yeah, well, I gave those shoes to that girl. Elphaba is furious because those are her birthright. Glinda makes a great point. You don't even care about fashion. And Elphaba says, well, that doesn't mean I don't care now. Those were my shoes, not yours to give away. So again, on Elphaba's side, I'm incandescent with rage for her because Glinda just doesn't get it. But again, I also expected more from this reunion between the two because Glinda felt abandoned by Elphaba as well. And so now, 13 years later, where's my resolution with these two? Now Elphaba is like, I'm gonna go get those shoes. There had been a prologue from Elphaba's point of view of her spying on Dorothy and company. We did not need that prologue, but we are now back to that point where the prologue took place, in which she is studying these people. She's trying to figure out what to do, but now she's kind of on her farewell campaign. She stops by Shiz, murders Madame Morrible, and then she encounters Bach, who was in the Wizard of Oz, and I was like, wow. I mean, he was a very minor part, but I was like, no wonder Bach is part of Wicked, because he was something that was pulled from the Wizard of Oz. But Bach married somebody from school that I think we're supposed to know who she is, but I can't remember. I think she had seen him on her way to Shiz, and he and his wife were like, oh, hey, wow, so good to see you again. What's up? And he again says, why do you care about the shoes? Because last I checked, you didn't care about fashion. She goes and she kills Madame Morrible. She comes back, and their tune has changed towards her. I guess now there's this public perception of her, and they are on that other side. Returns to Kiamo Ko, and she is on high alert for Dorothy and the friends. This is the only time and place in which all of these animals that she has collected become important. And it is because they were important in the novel. Because in the novel, so Killyjoy is a wolf dog. in the novel, in The Wizard of Oz, she sends wolves after them, and then she sends bees after them, and then she sends crows after them. So that's the only reason the bees are in the story, the crows are in the story, and the dog is in the story. Her crows are decrepit crows anyway, so it's like, I don't get it. Why is she giving these two crappy crows who breed more crappy crows who in the end are crappy crows and provide no line of defense for her, except because it plays into the original story. So all of these creatures of hers are defeated, and she doesn't even care about the dog. And I'm just like, but you've had this dog for a decade at least. Did you form no connection with him whatsoever? And I guess on one level, I can believe she didn't, because she still could care less about Lear. Even though after his near-death experience, she did semi-acknowledge that he was hers. But she doesn't even know where he sleeps at night. Anyways, let's get off that soapbox. Dorothy and company comes, and she basically just turns them into her servants. And then one day, she's having a chat with Dorothy, and she catches on fire. And Dorothy takes the water pail and tosses it on her, and she dies. And there we go. Like, that's the entire story. Two more things, actually. On her way home, she also encounters the dwarf who runs the Clock of the Time Dragon. What he reveals to her is that he's sort of in cahoots with Yackle. They both do the same thing, but they don't work together because he works for good and she works for evil. But he gives her this play-by-play of her life story with the Clock of the Time Dragon. This is where it's revealed that the wizard is her father. Very anticlimactic. While she's waiting on Dorothy and company, she convinces herself that Fiyero is the Scarecrow because they never found his body. That's the story. It was very meandering, very heavy, and very unenjoyable. I hope you liked this two-parter. I was trying to make it a little less painful for you than it was for me. Let me know what you think if you've actually read the book. What do you agree with me on? What do you disagree with me on? I will not take it personally, I promise. I really just want to know your takeaways that differed from mine, or maybe aligned with mine, because I thought it had so much potential, but it felt like a soapbox for Maguire to explore his themes, which again, I think that's fine too, but where's the story? Why write about how she was just misunderstood? Because she wasn't actually evil, she was just indifferent. But nothing you created led anywhere. So, there we go. Have a great day.